I'm not going to start off with talking, but beyond just asking those who have joined us what's on their mind. It would be really great to kind of hear what we shared in our session that was of interest, that piqued your attention and thoughts, and we'd love to just continue the dialogue in this forum and actually have a good conversation with all of y'all. Allison, are the participants in the audience able to go to, I don't know what the ground rules are here, to use mic? Are we using the chat function for questions?
We could do the chat function for questions, sure. We would like people to stay muted unless they'd like to speak.
Great. While we're waiting for folks to step up and get their thoughts out there for us, I think one of the things that we were exploring during the segment that Jaime and Mike and I led was around the focus of bringing culture into the play and really thinking about what it is our acquisition workforce needs to be able to go out and make good things happen. And we talked a lot about the internal support, but what we didn't talk a lot about was the role industry plays in this process. And so maybe we can kind of build a little conversation, Mike and Jaime, around the different ways that we've been working in our respective organizations and across the federal acquisition community on making sure industry is a part of our process, both early and consistently throughout our buying, our acquisition. So, Mike, do you think that's a fair place to start? And do you want to lead that part of the discussion?
Sure, I think that that makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, modernization is going to take all players, traditional, non-traditional, small business, systems integrators to the department. So I think if I heard you correctly, you're looking for kind of the commercial sense of barriers to entry. And so we've done a lot. I think there's a great awareness right now on barriers to entry to the defense marketplace. It's very complex. It takes a long time. It costs a lot of money. I think we hit pretty well the options for rapid prototyping. You mentioned some, Paul, I mentioned some. That kind of gets to move with the speed of the commercial sector. But I think we also need to be very mindful that as we move forward in some of the compliance things, I know Jaime mentioned some, but we want to make sure that we are balancing the compliance measures we're putting into place with barriers to entry. We don't want to put all of this work forth to lower barriers to entry, only to develop some. And a couple things come to mind in the cybersecurity realm that I think we want to be very, very mindful about how we set those things up to balance the cybersecurity and the privacy with also making sure that we have access to some of those leading edge companies to get to the defense marketplace and not be putting in barriers while we're taking them off. In my mind, I kind of see the cartoon of on the front end, they're picking up barriers, and right behind them, there are more barriers being put into place of different nature. So we want to make sure that we avoid that scenario. I'll pause there for any other thoughts around the room on that.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, great minds, Polly, because right before you asked your question, I asked of everyone in the chat exactly what we're talking about is what barriers to entry do you still see from industry side that government continues to do? And to that point that Mike just made is that I certainly continue to see government just continuing to kind of shoot themselves in the foot with creating maybe unintended barriers, certainly that need more foresight. And that really, for me, is creating good strategic partnerships internally with policy and taking a look at the policies that are in place that may be prohibiting or inhibiting innovation. I mean, I'm a big, like, let's not make more regulation. Let's not make more policy if we can help it, but certainly take a look at what's there that may be prohibiting it If there's policy that would advance innovation, certainly I'm interested in that. But as I mentioned, sometimes it goes the other direction. So I'm a little bit, hesitant to go in that route. But, hey, whatever makes sense, certainly I'm open for it. But really, it is those internal partnerships with policy and also legal. Not to browbeat any of our legal partners, because they're obviously very important, but sometimes I do get the sense that there are some procurement attorneys who may not be as comfortable being as aggressive as we are in trying to transform, certainly with techniques that we're trying to do that would help eliminate some of these barriers or the types of communications that we're having. Certainly, we talked in our panel about leveraging the current technologies that we have, like we're doing right now, to help engagement, have lower costs to industry days for companies that do not have a lot of B&P resources. So joining a Zoom call is certainly a great opportunity for them to engage and learn with lower costs for more business development for other opportunities as well. So those are the types of partnerships that I'm looking to internally, is to lower those barriers from that direction. But certainly externally, I'm always on the lookout for feedback from industry on things that they continue to see, and advice to help do things differently, because that's part of my kind of sales pitch, if you will, to industry looking to get in the door. Certainly if you don't have government business, or if you have a smaller footprint, or even large companies who really have excellent institutional knowledge on different ways that we should be executing to transform not only the way we do business, but certainly for technology, since it's a big part of it, is getting that feedback and really learning from industry and trying to get that kind of commercial mindset, right? By like a venture capitalist, and how can we do that? So it's kind of, we also talked in our panel about creating the ecosystem that's available to innovate procurement. And that's really kind of like my focus, is certainly the internal part of it is very important, but also let's not forget the external part of it, because the institutional knowledge that industry brings is vital if we're really going to transform and develop these strategic partnerships, and not a transactional relationship on contract to contract, which is very much kind of a compliance status quo type of thing. So those are the types of things that we're really looking to do and create that culture of change internally and externally with our partnerships, and try to eliminate some of the barriers to entry that are prohibiting really innovative companies with very interesting solutions that we otherwise wouldn't know about just simply posting RFIs on beta.sam.gov without further exploration of what's out there through more expansive market research opportunities and engagement with industry.
Hey, Jamie, this is Dave DeQuino. If I could jump in. When you talk about the barriers, we still are scared to death to have conversations. Contracting officers, are, I can't talk to you. You've got to put it in writing. I've got to send it out to everybody. There's no discussion on innovation, because it always defaults to, I can't tell you anything, even if it's a conversation about innovation. And I still think that's a barrier. My own folks are trained to be terrified, and they have conversations with contracting officers and come to confession like they were breaking and entering, because my God, they had a conversation they were supposed to have. It's crazy. And then the other part I'll tell you is the past performance. A real obsession on past performance will cause consolidation, because now everybody has to buy past performance. And there's a balance between past performance and innovative capability. So if you focus too much on show me that you've done it before, then you're not going to get the innovation. Now, of course, when I'm the incumbent, I love past performance. But in general, we probably ought to open the door a little broader.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Paul. I just want to say, I think you and I both laughed at that comment.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, because it's so spot on. It's the attitude of well, if I talk to this company, then I have to talk to that company, and I don't have time, so I'm not going to talk to any company, because that's the safe bet. And I absolutely understand that. I appreciate that. And that's something that we're trying to help with, certainly at the Internal Revenue Service through the creation of the Procurement Innovation Branch, but also the Acquisition Management Planning Division, which I had mentioned in my panel, is the front door to procurement to help alleviate some of these pressures that contracting officers have, because I certainly get that. I mean, you're flooded with, 50, 100 emails a day, asking for feedback and things of that nature. And, to help also alleviate that, we have excellent industry liaison who was very aggressive in engaging with industry. And we're just, he and I are kind of this dynamic duo of trying to really find opportunities to alleviate some of these pressures that our workforce have, because we want to be more open. We want to be more transparent. We want to find different opportunities for collaboration and communication so that the contracting officers don't feel this pressure. But it's just, sometimes it's funny because, internally, I'm asking about opportunities that I'm being asked, like, hey, can you help me, find out about this opportunity? And I can't even get a response sometimes. So it's just very, I totally feel your pain about, just the lack of engagement and why it happens. But yeah, that's definitely a huge barrier, is just that communication, and just like, look, I'm just not going to talk to anybody just because that is the safest bet for everyone.
For Office of Federal Procurement Policy Mythbusters memos, tons and tons of attention focused on this, and we are still definitely in a very kind of risk-adverse framework around talking to industry. And of course, our workforce feels like, we want to be fair, we want to be equitable, so we either make time for everybody or we don't do it at all. And so we're really working. And honestly, at DHS, this is team by team, right? We're not trying to boil the ocean, because that's going to lead to more memos that go unanswered. But team by team, just encouraging, smart risk-based decisions. You put out a meaningful RFI, and I don't mean give me your proposal and your detailed pricing and an RFI response. I mean a meaningful, targeted RFI with real questions that help inform our requirements and where we want to go. And from there, you determine who can you talk to that can help you answer the mail. What do you still need to know before you put this acquisition on the street? And how can you get that input so that you're, building the right solicitation and the right requirements so that your needs can be met? And so when industry looks at it in its final form, they actually are able to meaningfully respond and provide meaningful proposals that help us all accomplish what we want to do, which is work together as partners to deliver the mission of the federal government. But there are definitely, it's an uphill battle. Our leadership is pretty good about this, right? She demands that we work on communication strategies, and we've put together a process that's called the Procurement Strategy Review. And it's an early pre-acquisition planning, high-level conversation about what it is you're trying to buy, what you've learned from the market so far, and what you're going to be asking industry as you continue to shape the requirements. So that's our place to kind of start talking internally about what our plan is for industry communications, and it's helped.
Great.
Jerry, sorry.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to kind of pull the thread on this a little bit. This is kind of a hardy perennial, like how much can you talk to the KOs? I mean, this is something pre-COVID, It's something we talk about. So the question I have for you and on the industry side, has that changed? Has COVID changed that at all, or has it made it better or worse? And then to answer one of the questions in the chat, is there's obviously probably a difference between prior to solicitation release and after. So, I just want to open that up for perspectives on both the government and industry side.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take
jump on the grenade first.
I'll take the easy one. Before solicitation release, if you go and you read the FAR, we have very strong discretion about what it is we do with pre-solicitation communications. Once a solicitation is released, the contracting officer controls those communications. And so they do need to be equitable and fair. That doesn't mean we don't talk to industry. That doesn't mean that the gate comes down and all of the padlocks go up and we don't know the codes to those padlocks until after the award is made. but the CO controls, or the KO controls, those communications after release of solicitation. That is literally the only difference in what communications can look like. We have seen really phenomenal examples that are a great roadmap to what can be done with post solicitation release communications, with transparent, honest communications when there are delays, with the anticipated milestones drafted in a solicitation when it goes out, so that industry knows and can plan accordingly. And those are only good if we communicate if those change. And we know from industry that really all they're looking for is an understanding of when a solicitation is going to drop, and then what that schedule is going to be toward award, so that they can work and plan their resources to that. And then to be notified if there's changes to that schedule. That's like at a very basic level. Even providing that is a step up from what I've seen happen. And so that, that's our starting point. And then how we engage to meaningfully assess and honestly negotiate, which is, a word we often don't talk about, but that's the key role of a contracting officer, is to negotiate with our industry partners awards that are in the best interest and of the best value for the government. So lots to go at here, Jerry. You've pulled a thread. I'll stop to let Mike and Jaime chime in and add their perspective.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the communication issue, I think, is exacerbated by risks of protest, right? So if I, again, if I talk to this company and I don't talk to that company, then there might be some undue influence or some competition issues. So they fear protest. Certainly a protest after contract award is feared. But the reality is, and Polly was mentioning, is that the openness and the transparency are really what improve the process. So, why do I protest from industry? Well, if I can't get a debrief, or if I get a bad one and I just don't have confidence in the contract award decision, and you're not being transparent with me, and I feel that I've been wronged, well, those are factors that may kind of trigger a protest, or at least thoughts of it. And there's just great opportunities to really provide that confidence in the contract award decision and ensure you follow processes through that openness and transparently, certainly after solicitation, such that, if a company is going to file a protest, certainly we feel confident that it won't be sustained. I'll say that. But of course, we don't want the protests. We want to have that transparency. And good debriefs are a great way to hinder that as well, by ensuring that we, again, provide confidence in the contract award decision. And that's really what I hammer home, both in providing coaching and in training, which is that's the most important factor for industry, is if I have confidence that you did this well and that I wasn't altered or hindered in any way, that's great for me, because now I don't have to invest resources in basically finding out why I lost or other information that will help me determine if there's other opportunities for perhaps corrective action. So I don't want to be going down that road, but certainly I want to be open and transparent after the solicitation is released. But really, a lot of what we've talked about, as Polly was mentioning, is about doing good, effective market research with industry and really finding different opportunities to look at problems in a different way, and getting that institutional knowledge from industry about how best to shape a need and a requirement so that it's in the best interest of a government's mission, right? That's ultimately what I'm trying to do. So those are the types of things that I'm looking for in regards to my communications, is prior to solicitation, right? As far as I'm concerned, everything's on the table. Polly mentioned the Mythbusters campaign, and I always give advice to industry, which is sometimes you have to educate your customer as well, right? Because there are some folks in the workforce who may not know about Mythbusters, or simply not comfortable with the content in it, or just have this, kind of lack of transparency mindset for safety's sake. So there is an education process that can also happen from industry, saying, hey, did you think about looking at your problem this way? If you're not the point of contact, who will be, and just trying to find different ways to engage is the advice that I always give industry, is to just try to find different opportunities for that collaboration, because it will be there. Sometimes you have to push for it, but don't push too hard, right? Because that's counterproductive. So those are the types of things that we're really looking at. But just to hammer home that transparency issue is very important, because it helps both pre and post solicitation. That's very important for that collaborative approach that we want to create those strategic partnerships with our industry partners.
Yeah, I agree with both Polly and Jaime on that, especially Jaime's points of communication and transparency can't be overstated for that. And again, this goes back to the culture issue that we talked about earlier with the leadership example that they set. And we've prototyped a couple different methodologies to help us get to this. And to Jaime's point on market research, we've established now an entire team that is focused on rich, robust market research, as well as a lot of work we put at the front end on that needs statement, the problem statement that's not a requirements document, to try to be as transparent as possible with folks on both sides to get at that.
Yeah, we as we work with teams and as we talk across our organization, one of the things we really talk about around this engagement, especially post solicitation, is if you inadvertently release information to one industry partner, the worst case is you amend your solicitation and share that with everybody, right? Like, let's just be honest. Even after solicitation is released, if we mess up, there's options here. And so, giving folks the latitude to be smart and good business advisors talk, right? They don't just sit down and lock those doors and seal off communication. We want to make sure that we're having the conversations that are going to net the best outcomes for the resultant contracts, and beyond those contracts to performance under those contracts. And so when we bring our CEOs into the mindset of you're not awarding a contract, you're enabling mission, and we talk about the value of getting that right, that opens up, I think, some comfort of, man, there's going to be longer issues if I don't have these meaningful conversations now. And so how can we work together to learn so that we get it right, so that our mission doesn't have setbacks as a result of the work we do.
Well, Polly, you hit on a key point, though, right? You get what you incentivize. And if a contracting officer has a conversation, there's a lot of documentation and memo writing and all of that to do. If they don't talk to anybody, it's a lot easier. So we have to understand what their motivations are and how we're incentivizing them. But the bottom line is, if you don't have the conversation, then we in industry are saying, well, then I have to go buy access. I got to go acquire these companies that already do business with that agency. And then guess what? Less competition. So you get the opposite result by not having the conversations. Yeah,
no, without a doubt. And I just put a little excerpt from FAR 1.102B, which is, the guiding principles and for performance standards in the FAR. I love showing you all the FAR where it's helpful and not a get to know document. And there is so much more get to yes than get to know in the FAR. And I think that's part of it, Dave, is changing the mindset among our acquisition community. The part that I just cut and pasted there has everything to do about those rules, regs, processes, procedures, all the documentation steps that we require. And when you look at what the FAR guides us to do, it's to make sure we're considering those implications of those procedures that we put in place, and do the benefits exceed the costs. And sometimes we get into documentation steps where the costs don't necessarily exceed the benefits. And we've actually updated our Homeland Security Acquisition manual a few years ago to remove the requirement to write individual evaluation reports for the technical team. We've said, you know what? It's more meaningful when that technical evaluation team sits down together, whether it's virtually or at a conference table, and has a discussion about the proposal, whether it was an oral or a written proposal, and arrives at their consensus and documents their decisions there in real time with each other. that is much more meaningful and value added than having them go isolated on their own and write up a formal document capturing their individual position on a evaluation, on a proposal received. They have to read it. They have to do their homework. We adult our teams, right? They have to come and be adults and be prepared for that consensus discussion. And I have coached teams, and I have, as a CEO, said, y'all aren't ready. We're going to reconvene tomorrow. Get your work done. If I see folks not come prepared, because life happens, I get that, but come prepared, and let's have that meaningful consensus discussion, deliberation, and then document our feedback. We found is much more valuable benefit than the added cost and time and reviews of individual reports that don't necessarily have anything to do with our ultimate decisions on an evaluation. So, that's a little example of a meaningful change that has demonstrated to our workforce that we're trying to make their jobs more meaningful and more efficient.
Hey,
Well, I love it, Polly. I've already quoted you. Silence is the authority to innovate. So there we go.
Dave and Dan and others that were on the industry side in the M&A panel, that was a really good discussion on how, this time COVID has really helped increase your intimacy with your customer. I'm not sure I caught it, but the question I've got for you and for others, there's numbers of other CEOs on this as well. How is the COVID experience, the COVID kind of environment help with net new business, like net new customers? I mean, that seems like naturally a harder thing to do because you don't have the personal interactions, but I wonder if you could talk a bit about that, and whether the government moved to like virtual industries days, those kind of things, whether or not that's helping or if there's more we can do on that front.
Yeah, this is Dan. I mentioned in our panel that COVID really created an opportunity for us to really, one that we picked up, to focus on sort of modernizing mission effectiveness, right? And to bring innovation to the table. As I mentioned on our panel, Google Cloud, has not been in the cloud business as long as AWS or as Microsoft. But, what has helped us is really focusing on mission problems, whether it is, speeding unemployment benefits at state and local, or creating sort of virtual career centers so people can look for jobs, or virtual DMVs, or all the stuff we've done around COVID, contact tracing and symptom tracking. I think government customers who've been told to adopt cloud for the last 10 years, but notwithstanding a decade, cloud spend is still less than 10% of total IT spend. There's been, notwithstanding all the policy direction to go to cloud, there's been a real slowness of movement because of concerns about security and compliance, and really having to manage another IT environment on top of typically complicated and complex legacy environments. But what COVID's done for us is really to have no-nonsense conversations about pressing government problems around addressing COVID, addressing provision of benefits in a world that's sort of remote work and where people can't go to do stuff in person. And so for us, it's been really effective at allowing us to bring in our innovation to customers and have them think creatively on how to solve problems, sort of notwithstanding sort of historic slowness in terms of people's movement to the cloud.
Okay. Another question from the chat for folks is one we didn't really cover was, how are you all recruiting more on the, I guess, industry and government side? How are you all recruiting and retaining workforce? What are the question was from an undergraduate, how can I get into the defense industry? And so likewise, same could be for graduate students. So how's this, has this environment affected your pipeline and workforce? What kind of measures are you taking, and what kind of results are you finding? So,
I can share a little bit about this from the DHS perspective. We go out to colleges and universities all the time. Career fairs, you name it. Most of them have converted pretty pretty seamlessly, though not without learning, to virtual fairs and platforms. But that, the getting the word out, trying to make, I say it's sell the sizzle, right? Trying to make federal acquisition exciting and fun, and trying to compete with Dan and companies that are far more sexier is our responsibility, because there is a tremendous value in federal service. And so we get the word out through a lot of just active conversations, of trying to explain the importance of civil servant work, and then leveraging all of the authorities we have, just like acquisition authorities and toolkits. We leverage those hiring authorities that we have every step of the way. And so I've mentioned a few in the chat for Andrew and others, that the Pathways program we've been using very effectively. We just launched a program called SHIP, and it's Student Hire Internship Program. It brings seniors and some juniors into the DHS acquisition community. While they're still in school, they have to work 620 hours and maintain, I think it's a 2.5 average. And then we can, using that hiring authority, hire them on permanently. So those folks are going to get hired on directly into our acquisition career development program, and then prove themselves out with great training on the job and experiential learning for 3 years. And then they're permanently hired as federal acquisition workforce members. So that's just an example of how we are trying to build great pipelines specifically for acquisition. But there are a lot of other similar pipelines in place for IT and human resources and other lines of business across our organization.
Yeah, we've actually doubled down on our internship program. I know a lot of our peers killed the internship program with COVID, and we had to shift a bit to the virtual mostly, but it's been a boon for us. We're going to accelerate it even more. Probably, like you said, we've hired some on the spot right away, or gave them continuing work if they were seniors, so that we can keep our claws in them and they just roll right over to Serco. After that, we're looking at apprenticeship programs to bring people in. And my God, we've got hundreds of, we call them COVID employees, that we haven't met yet. And the interesting thing for me is the younger folks, they're dying to get into the company. They don't want to sit home. They're absolutely joyful to come in and meet people and have some social environment.
Great.
Yeah, I echo Polly's thoughts. We leverage Morgue Plumbers National Security Innovation Network. That's a sub-organization to DIU. They're out on college campuses taking hacking for defense to solve DoD problems, but it also works as a talent scouting function as well, to get a sense of students out there. For Andrew, you saw Polly's and my response in the chat room. There are opportunities available. Internships, we have had interns at DIU every year for well, since we started, and we continue now. It was an adjustment for us to go to virtual with interns, but that was an easy adjustment. And then once we get folks on, we continue to seek out talent, bringing talent to the department. That's always something you hear about, is bringing talented technologists in. We just recently took advantage of a program called the Cyber and Information Technology Exchange Program. It really was designed to go both ways, DoD to the commercial sector and commercial sector to DoD, but we never really used it to bring in commercial executives. And we're doing that successfully now out in Silicon Valley. We have had challenges getting folks to enter the government salary structure from the tech ecosystem, as one might suspect. But surprisingly, folks are lined up to do it. I think it represents a unique mission set for entrepreneurs who, let's face it, entrepreneurs at a fundamental level want to solve problems. And we bring an interesting, challenging problem set to solve. So one other thing that I put in my note back to Andrew, though, is we need you. We need that fresh perspective for sure, but come with some patience, because it is not, unfortunately, as streamlined a process as it could be.
Yeah, I'd love to get perspective on a couple of the board members that are on the call. Hala Cezanne and Craig Reed. How are you doing in your companies? If I can put you on the spot. If not, I got another question to go to as well.
Jerry, we need to plug the Before I jump, sorry, Craig, and we are just passing in Mason what is going to be a revamped internship program. So it's going to start right now with marketing. We've already got a couple firms lined up, but the idea then is going to be senior retired executives are going to be leading a team for an entire semester to work on problem-based issues for a company. So we're going to start this with Sumit Srivastava's company, Array Technologies, where a team of students are going to work all semester long with a senior retired executive to walk them through some real internship problems. So we're trying to blend that internship and apprenticeship to get them real access to companies to do real issues. So if you and your companies want to, please reach out to us at Mason. You know, we have students who'd love to get involved and love to work, and we'll either have faculty alongside them to help, or we'll have we'll be asking members of Jerry's advisory board to guide. But that we just passed this week, so we're really excited about it.
I mean, I'm happy to say that at Altamira, we don't have as robust an internship program as my friend and mentor Dave DeQuino put in place at Serco. But we have a number of highly technical interns that came in DevSecOps and data analytics and areas like that. And we actually initiate their clearance process while they're here interning with us. You know, if we feel like there's a good fit and there's a potential for them to come on board with us after they graduate. And so we've had a limited number of folks that were on board this summer, throughout the summer, actually working on program and IRAD related work. And we're using that to fuel our pipeline for new hires as they graduate in the spring.
Greg, I think that's great. We should even be more creative and, you know, trade some of these young folks back and forth a little bit. I think that would be.
You can't have any of mine. You can't have any of them.
You know, just so everybody knows, Serco, Greg does have a Serco tattoo. You just have to wait till summer to see it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you guys can figure out that semi-permeable membrane between government and the commercial sector where folks can free flow back and forth without using advancement opportunities on each side, that would be a gigantic step forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We should play with
personally look at that dream. It's really hard to do. I mean, you take haircuts, you could go in, and it's the center sector is not there.
Right.
Heather, you want to say something real fast?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I echo what Craig said in a way. We had a good, just traditional college recruiting program, which we are looking at the same way we are now looking at virtual environments to do job fairs, to do the same thing. We haven't started it, but that's what we were looking to do for college recruiting. I am very interested in internship myself at Texas. I haven't done it, but I would love for us to do internship, you know, with GMU and others, with students at different colleges around the town. But I haven't done it in Texas. I've done it in my previous companies. And Brett, I'm very interested in helping what you just offered earlier.
Craig, I've already put you down. You have to do it as payment for coming into my MBA class. So actually, I owe you for that one, right? That's the other way around.
Right.
And then just, you know, to build off of that, I think awareness of opportunities is really important too. And to that end, you know, we have gone into classrooms as guest speakers and just shared the work we're doing, shared some of the stories similar to how we did today, and also asked students, you know, to think about what are we not thinking about, right? Sometimes innovation is really back to basics and really thinking about how different perspectives can really lend to new ideas.
All right, Jaime, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I put in the chat that there's quite a few government industry associations that are specific to certain industries, like, you know, cyber, or kind of like, you know, the hotter fields, if you will, for emerging technologies. So that's a great resource as well for students to take a look at kind of what's happening, certainly from an educational standpoint, but also a great networking source for companies that are looking to hire, that have these programs. And also these government industry associations also have their own programs for internships to place them with these companies. So certainly, you know, contracting specific, the National Contract Management Association, and there's a lot of great IT ones as well. Certainly ACT-IAC is one that I'm very active in, because it has quite a few different areas of activity around cybersecurity, AI, machine learning, even workforce, and quite a few different other types of skill sets and needs. So that's another resource that students certainly want to take a look at to find different avenues of entry into the defense industry base, but also the government market as well.
We got a question from Tanya. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tanya Lovelace. I'm a contracting officer with Interior, and I'm really interested in finding out about how, especially with DHS, how you're doing that intern program so that I can present it to our leadership. But I think the bigger picture is, I think we need to, as contracting professionals, get the word out that contracting is a career field. I think that there are a lot of people, students, that even don't know what it is. You know, people ask you, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a contracting officer. What's that? What do you do? So I think getting out there and saying, okay, here is a profession, and as a college student, here as a business major, here's where you can put those skills to work. Because, for example, we're, as contracting officers, have to be business advisors to our customers now. So always have, but those skills that are in accounting and finance and marketing are all viable to this profession. So I think we need to get out there more and let people know that this is actually an option, and it's actually a profession that you can get out there and get a job in the federal space and in private sector.
Yep. Great point, Tanya. I think we're getting close. I got one. There's one question that was at the beginning I want to share. I think this is more for the government folks, but to what extent do you? This is from my. We had a couple of people from embassies. I think she was an Australian, Melissa Firth. To what extent do you, or British, I can't remember. What extent do you engage with foreign partners to share best practice and lessons learned with respect to your active acquisition innovations? Do you see, is that happening at DIU, Mike, or is it happening? Do you all see that much? I mean, I know when I was in government, there were a number of efforts to help increase how we work across the industrial base, but they never got beyond sort of initial conversations. So any industry examples on that as well?
Yeah, you bet. There's a huge appetite. We've engaged with all kinds of partners and allies around the world at varying levels. It all starts for us with just a level set on who we are, our business model, because there's a lot of interest to replicate what DIU does in the respective ecosystem of our partners and allies. So we've done that. Now we're starting to take the next step. I talked about that Blue UAS domestic drone capability. We have the Canadians and Belgians are very, very interested to purchase that also. We have an ongoing agreement with the Indian MOD for our two innovation organizations to sync up quarterly and talk about what we're seeing in the respective ecosystems, what challenges we're looking at solving. And in fact, I think they're going to partner with us on one of our upcoming AI challenges that we open up. We have a close relationship with Australia, especially their space industry. There's some launch facilities down there that we have leveraged. So it has started and is growing rapidly. And in fact, that's one of the things as we celebrate our 5-year anniversary, we're looking out, what's next for us. We've started working with the Combatant Command J85s as the DoD partner to work with partners and allies. Defense Security Cooperation Agency is another way that we work with some of those folks to leverage that ecosystem. So it's only going to increase. I think the pace of it is going to increase and the magnitude is going to increase significantly going forward.
Okay, great. Anybody have any other questions or comments, or, I think we can do some final remarks from any panelists that want to remark, or any members of the audience that want to unmute and ask a question.
I did want to echo Tanya's remarks about educating people on contracting as a career option. It just reminds me of this story. I was at a networking event with a friend of mine who's an attorney, and it was not in this environment. And she was introducing us to another friend of hers, and she said, "This is such and such. He's an attorney, and this is Jaime Gracia. He's not an attorney," because she didn't quite grasp like what government contracting was, and this was mostly for college age students. So it was just it just reminded me of that story about educating people that contracting is a great career field. It's a wonderful business opportunity for being a strategic buyer. And as Polly mentioned, selling the sizzle of just the wonderful opportunities that government contracting has for a career in government, and the types of things that you do working with industry partners. So that's really what needs to be focused on. I know there's a lot of efforts being done along those lines with the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, but also we internally are looking at different opportunities to get talent just outside of kind of the contracting mindset, and looking more for critical thinking and business skills and those types of more advanced educational opportunities, so we can leverage that knowledge in different ways to help us with our transformation journeys and also with contracting itself. Thank you.
Great. Well, it's hard not to end on the sizzle, because there was a lot of sizzling going on today, this morning. I want to thank everyone. Really robust conversation and great points across all. And this has been recorded too, so this will be posted as well, and share with all your friends and allies and partners. And I want to thank again, and look forward to seeing many of you again in December. All right, thanks again.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jerry. Stay
Take
in
care.
touch, folks.
Thanks, Jerry.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good sessions.
Have a great day.